There's probably no class quite as iconic as the Wizard in a fantasy setting, and that's particularly true of the Forgotten Realms. It is filled with powerful and infamous wizards, such as Elminster, the Symbol, or Sas-Tam. And Baldur's Gate 3 has a lot of wizardly potential as well, as the Wizard has more archetypes than any other class out there, which is why I thought a dedicated video to the different archetypes not yet released was necessary, because despite all being wizards and having similar playstyles, as always, the devil is in the details, and these details we seek to explore. Currently, in early access, we have access to two archetypes, the Abjurer and the Evoker, of which the Evoker seems to be hands down the better, but how might these other wizard archetypes compete with them? As per the previous video, I doubt that BG3 will ever exceed level 15, so I will limit my discussion of abilities up until that level. Unfortunately for us, wizard specialty abilities are capped at level 14. Now historically, the study of magic is divided into so-called arcane traditions, or schools of magic, and in former times, a wizard could specialize in such a school, or become a generalist. But in 5th edition, every wizard eventually chooses a specialty in a school. The schools are, in no particular order, Abjuration, Conjuration, Enchantment, Evocation, Divination, Illusion, Necromancy, and Transmutation. Now, what is effective, of course, is not always what is cool, but I still thought I would start with what I think is the coolest of the schools, namely Necromancy. I mean, who doesn't like the idea of raising corpses and draining the life out of foes? And I actually think, for the record, that the Necromancer could end up being pretty good in Baldur's Gate 3. At level 2, like all wizards, Necromancers gain Necromancy Savant, and need only spend half the standard gold price to copy necromantic spells into their spellbook. And, starting at 2nd level as well, they gain the ability called Grim Harvest, which allows the Necromancer to gain life energy by killing creatures with their spells. Once per turn, when the Necromancer kills creatures with a spell of 1st level or higher, the Necromancer regains hit points at twice the spell's level, or even better, thrice the spell's level if the spell belongs to the school of necromancy. This ability, understandably, does not work on constructs or undead. And beginning at level 6, the Necromancer gains what I would argue is his signature power, called Undead Thralls. Whenever the Necromancer casts Animate Dead, he creates one additional zombie or skeleton. The undead creature's maximum hit points are increased by an amount equal to the Necromancer's level, and finally, the undead creature adds the Necromancer's proficiency bonus to its damage rolls. At level 10, the Necromancer gains the ability Inured to Undead, which makes him resistant to necrotic damage and prevents him from having his maximum hit points reduced. Finally, at level 14, the Necromancer gains the ability to command the undead, whatever their origin. As a standard action, the Necromancer can attempt to take control of a single undead creature within 60 feet, which forces a charisma save on the part of the creature. If it succeeds, it becomes immune to this ability. If it fails, it becomes friendly to the Necromancer and obeys the Necromancer's commands. Intelligent undead with an intelligence of 8 or higher gain advantage on their saving throws against this ability, and an undead creature with an intelligence of 12 or higher can save every hour until it breaks free. Now, I honestly think, as I suggested before, that the Necromancer belongs in the top tier of specialties, if only for their Undead Thrall's ability, because already in early access, zombies appear to be very useful. So an additional superpowered zombie that can infect enemies is going to be even better. And on top of that, most of the Necromancer abilities are straightforward and can be easily translated into a CRPG, unlike some of the other specialties, unfortunately. And the Illusionist is next on our agenda. Like all specialists, the Illusionist gains the Illusionist Savant ability at level 2, which makes the cost of copying Illusionist spells into his spellbook cost only half. But Illusionists also gain Improved Minor Illusion at level 2, which allows the caster to add both sound and an image to the illusion with a single casting of the spell. At level 6, the Illusionist gains Malleable Illusion, which allows the Illusionist to change the nature of any illusion spell he casts that has a duration of over 1 minute, as long as the illusion can be seen. At level 10, the Illusionist gains Illusory Self and can create an illusory duplicate of himself, which acts to protect the illusionist from harm. When an attack roll is made against the illusionist, the duplicate can intervene, resulting in the attack automatically missing, but then making the illusion dissipate. This can be used once per short or long rest. And finally, at level 14, the Illusionist gains the secret of weaving shadow magic into their spells, called Illusory Reality. Any illusion spell of first level or higher can be cast such that part of the spell becomes real for 1 minute, either inanimate or non-magical, but it cannot be used to deal damage or harm anyone. Unfortunately, the Illusionist suffers from the predictable problem of CRPGs. Illusion magic is best used in a creative and imaginative setting, such as pen and paper, where hard limitations of what can be implemented and cannot don't really come into play. I don't want to draw too many conclusions prematurely, but unless Larian gets really creative and innovative, I don't think the Illusionist will be very good in Baldur's Gate 3. Now I have the feeling that the Diviner might win hands down in terms of sheer utility compared to the other wizard archetypes. As with all wizard specialties, the Diviner gets Diviner Savant and can copy divination spells into his spellbook for half the cost it would normally amount to. Already at level 2, the Diviner gains the rather powerful ability called Portent, which once per long rest allows the Diviner to roll 2 d20s and record the numbers rolled. Any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check made by the Diviner or a creature that the Diviner can see can be replaced by the Diviner. This replacement must be chosen before the roll, and it can be done once per turn. And each of these Portent rolls can only be used once per long rest, and unused ones will be lost after a long rest. At level 6, the Diviner gains Expert Divination, which allows the Diviner to regain one expended spell slot, a divination spell of 2nd level or higher. The spell slot has to be at least 1 level lower than the divination spell the Diviner casts, and cannot be higher than 5th level. At level 10, the Diviner gains the Third Eye ability, which permits the Diviner to choose one of the following powers: Dark Vision, up to 60 feet, Ethereal Sight, which allows the Diviner to see into the ethereal plane within 60 feet, Greater Comprehension, which allows the Diviner to read any language, and finally, See Invisibility. This lasts and/or is retained until a long or short rest. And finally, at level 14, the Diviner gains Greater Portent, which functions as Portent, except that the Diviner rolls 3 times instead of just 2. Now again, it seems to me that the Diviner, in terms of sheer utility, wins over the other wizard archetypes. And add to that the fact that most of these abilities seem relatively easy to implement into our CRPG, into BG3, and I think you have a winning combination. Now when you think of Conjurers, you might be reminded of the Red Wizard of Thay from the original Baldur's Gate series called Edwin. And Edwin was OP, but less so due to him being a conjurer, and much more so due to his magical amulet that gave him extra spells. Like all wizard specialists, conjurers only need to spend half the amount they normally would to copy conjuration spells into their spellbook at level 2, and additionally gain the ability Minor Conjuration, which allows the conjurer to conjure up an inanimate object in his hand, or an unoccupied space that he can see within 10 feet. But it has to be a non-magical object that the conjurer has seen before, and can weigh no more than 10 pounds. The object radiates magic, and lasts for an hour until it is damaged. At level 6, the conjurer gains Benign Transportation, which allows him to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that he can see, or alternatively to a space occupied by a small or medium creature. This can be used to swap places if the creature is willing. This ability can be used once per long rest, or until the conjurer casts a conjuration spell of 1st level or higher. At level 10, the conjurer gains Focus Conjuration, which prevents his concentration from being broken whilst concentrating on a conjuration spell and taking damage. At level 14, the conjurer gains Durable Summons, which gives any creature he summons an additional temporary 30 hit points. Now to my mind, the conjurer seems even more lackluster than the illusionist in some ways, because again, the difficulty of implementing pen and paper into a CRPG. Conjuring objects is much better when you have the freedom to use them without limitations, which requires imagination, and CRPGs, by dint of their very nature, do not lend themselves terribly well to that sort of mechanic. But the Enchanter is definitely an archetype that could potentially be fun. Like all wizard specialists, starting at level 2, enchanters can copy enchantment spells for half the cost into their spellbook. On top of that, At level 2, the Enchanter gains the Hypnotic Gaze ability, which allows him to enthrall another creature. One creature can be chosen within 5 feet of the Enchanter, and the target must make a Wisdom saving throw against the spell DC or be charmed until the end of the wizard's next turn. The targeted creature's speed drops to 0, and it is dazed. The Enchanter can spend an action each turn to maintain the effect, but the Enchanter needs to stay within 5 feet of the creature in order for the effect to be maintained. If the creature takes damage, the effect ends as well, and this can be used once per long rest. At level 6, the Enchanter gains the Instinctive Charm ability, which allows him to divert an attack made within 30 feet of him, provided the attacker is visible to the Enchanter. The attacker must make a Wisdom saving throw against the wizard's spell DC, and on a failed saving throw, the attacker must target the creature that is closest to him, including potential allies. If the save is successful, then the charm cannot be used on the creature until a long rest. This must be chosen to be used before an attack hits or misses, and creatures immune to charm are also immune to this effect. Beginning at level 10, the Enchanter gains Split Enchantment, and can make use of enchantment spells such that if a spell of first level or higher is cast, and it normally only targets one creature, it can target a second one. And at 14th level, the Enchanter gains the Alter Memories power, that allows him to make a creature unaware of the Enchanter's influence. When an enchantment spell is cast upon someone, the Enchanter can alter the understanding of the creature's condition such that it does not know it is being charmed. Furthermore, once before the spell expires, the Enchanter can use an action to make the creature forget some of the time it was charmed. It gains an Intelligence saving throw against the wizard spell, and if it fails, it will lose a number of hours of memories equal to 1 plus the Enchanter's Charisma score. And if the Enchanter chooses, he can make the creature forget less time. Now, in terms of overall utility, I think the Enchanter is pretty decent, certainly better than the Illusionist or the Conjurer, but still behind, I would argue, both the Necromancer and the Diviner. Some of the abilities can be used in a direct sense, since charm is at least theoretically useful, but creatures forgetting they have been charmed, I'm just not sure how you would implement something like that. Again, I hate to say it, but it's a mixed bag, as some of the abilities are just more applicable to pen and paper. Now, a little warning, I think that personally the Transmuter is probably the worst of the wizard archetypes, but here we go. Like all wizard specialists, Transmuters gain the Transmutation Savant ability at level 2, which allows them to copy spells into their spellbook of the Transmutation School at half the cost. Additionally, Transmuters gain the Minor Alchemy ability, which allows them to temporarily alter the physical properties of a non-magical object. This is a special alchemical procedure performed on one object that can be wood, stone, iron, copper, or silver, transforming it into one of those materials. In pen and paper, this is further broken down to the amount of material you can transform based upon the number of minutes the transmuter spends on it, with each 10 minutes adding another possible cubic foot. But after an hour, the substance reverts back to what it was. At level 6, the Transmuter gains the Transmuter Stone ability, which allows him to store transmutation magic, and either the Transmuter himself or another party member can benefit from it. The following effects can be created with a Transmuter Stone: Dark Vision, up to a range of 60 feet, an increase of movement speed of up to 10 feet, as long as the person is unencumbered, proficiency in Constitution saving throws, or resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. The Transmuter can choose one effect that is stored in the stone. Each time the Transmuter casts a transmutation spell of level 1 or higher, he can change the effect placed on the stone, which replaces the previous one. At level 10, the Transmuter gains the Shape Changer ability, which automatically adds the Polymorph spell to the wizard's spellbook if the wizard did not previously have it, and allows him to cast Polymorph without expending a spell slot. The ability allows the Transmuter to target himself only, and transform into a beast with a challenge rating of 1 or lower. This can be done once per long or short rest, although a separate polymorph spell can still be cast normally. And at level 14, the Transmuter gains the Master Transmuter ability that allows him to consume the reserve of transmutation magic stored in the Transmuter Stone in a single burst. If this is done, the Transmuter can choose several different effects, and once this is used, the Transmuter Stone is destroyed until the next long rest. And the Transmuter can gain access to the following abilities: Major Transformation, which allows him to transmute one non-magical object that is no larger than 5 cubic feet into another object of similar size and mass and of equal value or less. This requires 10 minutes of handling the object in order to transform it. And there's Panacea, which allows the transmuter to remove all curses, diseases, and poisons affecting a creature that is touched by the transmuter stone. Restore Life, which allows the stone to enact the Raise Dead spell on a creature the stone touches. This can be done without having the spell in your spellbook or using up a spell slot. Finally, there's the option to Restore Youth, which allows the transmuter to reduce the age of a creature by 3 die 10 years to a minimum of 13 years. However, this does nothing to extend the lifespan of the creature. Now, of course, I might be wrong about this, but it really feels that of all the specialties, the transmuter was most made for pen and paper and least for the CRPG. Some applications are certainly there, such as Raise Dead, or removing potential diseases, perhaps. But to be perfectly honest, I have no idea how many of these abilities would be implemented by Lorien in Baldur's Gate 3. So I guess we'll just have to wait. And the transmuter is definitely my personal least favorite. I mean, come on. Polymorphing into a creature with a challenge rating of 1 or less is just not very impressive. As I've mentioned several times, the issue is pen and paper. And this is particularly true of wizard specialties, because there's just so many abilities for specialties such as conjuration, transmutation, or illusion that just don't transfer well to a computer game. Of all the specialties that work both in terms of pen and paper and CRPG transferability, I would say the Diviner wins out, just in terms of overall utility, although I don't find the specialty terribly interesting. But there's no denying that avoiding attacks and regaining spells is pretty basic, but at the same time, incredibly useful. Now, in terms of coolness, but also I think some application utility, as I said, I would have to go with a Necromancer, because Necromancers are just really cool, and having an extra super zombie on the battlefield is definitely a plus point. And personally, it's entirely possible that my first playthrough might be a Deep Gnome Necromancer, something I've thought about quite a bit, in fact. But as for the other specialties, I hope to be surprised, but I don't really have high hopes for them. And yes, a little bit more powerful in the computer game context. Regardless of my opinion, or how these will be implemented in the game, do let me know what you think about the wizard archetypes, which ones you're most looking forward to playing, if you're going to play one at all. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and share. It really helps out the channel. And I'll check you out next time. Take care.